Well, hello again everybody and welcome to another episode, and we're back in the big chair today. It is a very big chair, isn't it? And I've got a very unusual little lens to show you from 7Artisans. It's this one, the 28mm F5.6. Now this lens is unusual in two ways. First, because it's an f5.6 maximum aperture, and that is very unusual. Generally modern lenses go to certainly to f3.5, usually to f2.8, and very often beyond that as well. But this little fellow goes only to f5.6, so that's one reason why it's unusual. Another reason why it's unusual is because of its appearance. It has this wonderful appearance that makes it look like an older lens from the 1930s or 1940s, 1950s, that kind of era. And it harks back to some of the great rangefinder lenses of the past. Lenses like this f250mm Scimitar from Leica, that's on the Leica 2 here, complete with focusing tab, or this Industar 22, another collapsible, and that's on the Leica 3 here, and that again, that's got a focusing tab, and both those lenses are 1940s lenses. So this one, wherever it's got to, this one really is harking back to an earlier era. Its design is unusual as well. It's got this tapered body. I'll give you a more closer look in a moment, but it's got this tapered body. It's widest at the point where it meets the camera, and it tapers to quite a narrow front section there. And it's got this lovely little focusing tab, just like the old lenses did. It's got a little focusing tab here, so you can find it really easily with your finger when you've got the camera to your eye like this. Very, very simple focusing. It's also got a very short focus throw of about a third of a turn, thereabouts, maybe a bit more, about a third of a turn. So this is a very unusual lens indeed. Shall we have a closer look? There's one thing more I've got to tell you. It's only available in Leica M mount, and of course it goes straight onto all the Leica M cameras, right from the M3 of the late 1950s right up until the most recent digital rangefinders from Leica, which still have that Leica M mount. But you don't have to have a Leica M camera to shoot it. This lens, of course, will adapt to any mirrorless body, as I'm doing here. It's sitting on my Sony A7 here. The adapter is very small because it's a rangefinder lens. It's made for Leica M rangefinders, so it does present a very small package. Now let's have a closer look. So there's our little 7Artisans rangefinder lens, and there's the tapered design that I was talking about, and I'm not sure that there were any older lenses that looked exactly like that, but it's certainly in the spirit of the older lenses. The size of the front is pretty much on a par with what the older lenses were. Here's the Industar 22 for comparison, and you can see that they're about the same. If I bring them to the same distance, they're about the same size at the front here. Here's the little focusing tab, and that's very, very easy and simple to find when you've got the camera to your eye, and that's a real boon for fast focusing. Not that you need to do too much focusing with this lens. It really isn't a lens that you need to put too much work into focusing, but we'll come to that shortly. There is, as you can see, a depth of field scale here. We've got the aperture ring, we've got the focus ring next, so that's from infinity to 1 meter. It goes only to 1 meter, just like the old rangefinder lenses of the past. And finally we've got the aperture ring here. It's got two little wings with a ridged grip on them, so you can find them nice and easy when you've got the camera to your eye, and that runs from F5.6 right the way around to F22. Now this is a very sharp lens, and with that reasonably slow maximum aperture of F5.6, it's probably not surprising, as I'm sure you know, the more you close your aperture down, the more sharp, the sharper your lens will become. And as this has a maximum of F5.6, it's pretty sharp right from the outset. So it's very, very sharp wide open. It really is incredibly sharp, and it records a tremendous amount of detail right from the start, right from wide open. As I say, it's also got deep focus from wide open. There's very little shallow depth of field with this lens. There's very little blur from this lens. There is some blur, it will give you some separation if you're close to your subject, but the minimum focus distance is only 1 meter, just like some of the older rangefinder lenses, just like both of these. Where's it gone? Where's me Leica 3 gone? There it is. Just like both of these old lenses here, the Leica lens is 3 foot or 1 meter. The Industar 22 is also 3 foot or 1 meter. The Jupiter 8, the Industar 50. Pretty much all the rangefinder lenses I can think of have that fairly long minimum focus distance. So that's another bar to getting blur. It's even less opportunity to make background blur. So it really is a case of deep focus with this lens, really at whatever aperture you're at. Obviously if you're at 5.6 you're going to get less deep focus than if you're at 22, but generally speaking this is a lens with pretty deep focus, and the field has lots and lots of depth, and most of the shot is going to be in focus whichever aperture you choose, really. If you stop it down past f5.6, of course this lens becomes bitingly sharp. It really is hard to describe how sharp it becomes. You get very, very deep depth of field. Everything is in focus, especially if you go to f11 or beyond. Pretty much everything is in focus. In fact, looking at the depth of field scale here, if I set the focus to 1.2 meters, in fact I'll show you over here. So I've got the 1.2 meter mark by the f11 mark, and so we've got from 1.2 meters in focus. Now if we go around to the other side where the other f11 mark is, then we'll see that we're very nearly at infinity. And if we just turn that a touch more, gosh, in fact we've gone past infinity there. So yeah, at f11 everything from about a meter to infinity is in focus. And of course if you go past f11 to f16 or even f22, no problem on a mirrorless camera, on a digital camera, because you can just whack up the ISO to compensate. Then of course things get incredibly sharp and the entire field is in focus, all the way from a meter right out to infinity, probably less than a meter, and maybe even behind you as well. That's how sharp this thing is. It's just incredible. And the shots it makes when the aperture is stopped down to f11, past f11 or so, they're like a mobile phone shot. You know, the very tiny sensors in mobile phones give you very, very deep focus. That's what this lens will do. Everything is in focus. It gives very nice colour. It's a little on the cool side, but actually I don't mind that. I do like cool colours, and I'm not keen on lenses that are very warm in their presentation of colour. I'd much prefer a lens that errs on the cool side. If that's not to your taste, then of course you can easily make adjustments in camera, or if you shoot the image you can make adjustments in post. Very, very simple to do. It's got very strong contrast, but it does drop in direct sunlight. It doesn't do it too readily, but you get a hood with this lens, little hood from 7Artisans, which just pops on the front there, and that is needed, especially if you're shooting in strong sunlight or anywhere with any direct light sources. If that light source should catch the glass at just the wrong angle, it will wash out either just a portion of the shot or the entire shot will be washed out, and you won't really be able to easily bring that back. So it is best to use a hood. Make sure you don't shoot in areas where there's a lot of direct light, because it will wash out. But use the hood and you should be fine. There is a tiny bit of vignetting with this lens, which I was surprised to see because it's a very slow aperture, but there is a tiny bit of vignetting. I actually don't mind that because it focuses attention on the subject. It's not like shooting, say, a vintage 1.2 or a 1.4 lens where you do tend to get very heavily darkened corners. This one isn't like that. It's just a touch of darkening which sort of centers attention right onto your subject, wherever that should happen to be in the frame. Now, this is an engaging and unusual little lens. It really is quite a likeable little thing, but I must admit I initially found it a little bit hard to place. I mean, after all, you can use any 28mm lens and stop it down to F5.6 or beyond there if you just want a lens that will you can do some hyperfocal shooting with. However, after I'd used this lens a bit more and got familiar with it and what it can do and what it can't do, I understood what this lens is. This lens is a hyperfocal lens. The purpose of this lens is to set a small aperture so that you get a very deep depth of field, so that you're ready to shoot. It's ideal for street work or anywhere really that you don't have time to focus or you don't want to think too much about focusing. It's a traditional rangefinder, hyperfocal distancing, hyperfocal focusing lens, and that's what it's for. And looked at like that, it really makes sense. After all, remember, if you stop down to f11, you've got pretty much the entire visual field from a meter right out to infinity in focus before you. And in that sense, this is a very traditional rangefinder lens, and I really like it for that. It's harking back to those old lenses. It's saying, look, we don't need anything particularly flash or particularly fancy to get good images on the street or wherever else. All we need is a well-made lens with good optics that doesn't necessarily need big wide aperture values, and that's what this lens is. You can use any other 28mm lens to do that, but then again, if I was using an SLR lens now on my mirrorless camera here, the adapter would make the whole thing much larger. Look how small this package is. It's a very light, very small, not quite pocketable, but not far off package. A really nice little combination. And of course, if you're shooting on a Leica M camera, this is much cheaper than any Leica lens I can think of. So a lovely little lens, a really nice little thing, something that I really warmed to. It's got a classic look, it's got great optics, and it's got that really handy focusing tab as well, so you can make minor adjustments, and they will only need to be minor adjustments if at all when you're shooting with this lens. So there we are, a very, very nice little traditional rangefinder lens. So I guess that's it from me for today. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and ring that bell before you go. Thank you very, very much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all the people who have subscribed, people who've subscribed recently, people who've subscribed some time ago and stayed with the channel as it's developed. Many, many thanks to you all. Many thanks also go to the patrons who make possible what this channel can do. Many, many thanks to all patrons who've just joined us, patrons who've been with us for ages and ages and who've supported the channel since it was that big. Many, many thanks to all of you, and that is a deep and heartfelt thank you. So that's it from me for now, and I will see you next time for some more Zenography.